Hey, it's Mike over at Cross Country Mortgage. And hope everybody had a fantastic weekend. Gail and I had a great week, and our daughter visited from Costa Mesa, spent time with family, hung out with her, went to the Oktoberfest on Saturday night at Turtle Bay. Great job. I tell you, if you want to go to a great family event, it's not a drunk fest that you would think on Oktoberfest. Turtle Bay does a great job. They had music, they had food, they definitely had beer, and they brought all the animals out, a lot of kids. It was just a really well done event. So highly recommend it for next year. Okay, so I always talk about what happened last week, what's going to happen this week. Try to give you tools, tips, tactics, information that you can use when you talk to your buyers and sellers. And boy, do you guys need to talk to your buyers and sellers. There is so much information out there, so much disinformation, so much fear, so much uncertainty, that it's so important that we get in front of a lot of this. So let's talk about what happened last week. The market actually improved about 27 basis points. Let's look at the charts. I show you this all the time. This is a representation of the trading of mortgage-backed securities in the bond market. And mortgage rates are determined by the trading of securities that are represented in this chart in the bond market. When we see a downward movement or these red bars, which are called candlesticks, that means money's flowing out of the bond market, mortgage rates are going up. When we see the green, money's flowing into the bond market, typically from the riskier stock market, and mortgage rates are getting better. So last week we saw an upward movement, slightly, 27 basis points. Today we're down, but hey, any improvement, and you can see over the last month, this is really the only improvement we've seen in a while. And there are two things that cause that. Number one, the Israeli-Hamas war. And number two, core inflation year over year came down a little bit, and there's some signs that it's starting to get abate. It's not going up as fast, and we've been seeing this for quite some time, but there's some numbers that came out. We'll look at those. So what does this mean? This means that lower mortgage rates on the horizon are coming. We just don't know when. And let's talk about what's going to affect the market this week. So I always try to give you a couple things. There's really two things that are going to affect the market this week, and that's the Israeli-Hamas war and the UAW strike. And I'll tell you why those kind of fall into the same category. And Fed speaks. So our next FOMC meeting, where the Fed decides to raise or lower rates, is coming at the end of October. We've got two more meetings this year, and then one in December. So let's talk about the conflict in Israel and the strike. So bond traders hate uncertainty. And we know mortgage rates are determined by the trading of mortgage-backed securities in the bond market. They want to know what's happening long-term. They're not like stock traders, which go day by day and the market goes up and down drastically, or it can. So bond traders want to say, hey, what's going to happen 6 months from now, 12 months from now, 5 years from now? And they determine how they're going to put their money or when they're going to put their money in that bond market based on long-term projections, certainty, conservative, confidence, that type of thing. So when there's uncertainty and unknowns, that causes disruption to their mindset and how they want to trade. And the Israeli-Hamas war has caused uncertainty. It's a geopolitical event. It's impacting the world in a massive way. And our heart goes out to everybody in this conflict. It's just horrific to watch the stories. And when there's uncertainty, when there's fear, generally everybody, investors, your 401ks, your retirement accounts, IRAs, day traders, foreign investors, they will park their money in a safer investment. And that's the U.S. bond market. It is the best bond market of comparable bond markets in the world. It's the safest. It's backed by the U.S. Treasury. So we also saw this with the Russia-Ukraine conflict. When it started, the war, money was parked in that bond market. We saw mortgage rates improve a little bit. So that's why we saw these rates get better, is there was just a real big shift in that money to a safer place until we know what's going to happen. And it might stay there for some time. And then we also are looking at the UAW strike. So this is going to start having an impact on economics, on our economy long term. And so that is also parking money in a safe place. If there's uncertainty, if the economy is not doing well, money will be parked in that safer bond market. So is this a long-term solution to, or a long-term outcome with lower rates, or short-term? Great question. We just depends how long and how impactful the Israeli-Hamas war is and the UAW strike is. And the longer it's impactful. The more uncertainty, the more fear, the more concern, the more money will be parked in that bond market. So a conflicting part of this is inflation. As inflation goes up or stays up, obviously nobody wants to buy mortgage-backed securities. They're not getting a return in the bond market, so they'll put their money out of there. So there's so much of this push and pull of this data that's really affecting our bond market. The second thing is Fed speaks. So we got a meeting coming up in 2 weeks. This is the last week that all the Fed members can talk about what they want to talk about and give their insight about what's happening with inflation. Should they raise the rate? Should they lower the rate? How are different pockets of economies doing around the country? And so Fed members could have an impact on rates, about where the people put their money in that bond market. So we'll be paying attention to a lot of those. So let me give you some insight on really what's happening with that inflation. We're starting to see some Fed members actually say, hey, we shouldn't raise rates anymore. And if you look at these three quotes from Christopher Waller, Raphael Bostic, and Lori Logan, these are all voting Fed members. They're finally saying that, hey, we're getting some good inflation data. Us raising the Fed fund rate is starting to impact inflation. It's starting to lower it, starting to abate it. Maybe we shouldn't raise rates moving forward. We should just let this really bake the economy, unfortunately, into a recession, but that is going to be good long-term for mortgage rates. And these are some Fed members that have been, very hawkish on raising rates. And now they've kind of changed their tune in the last month. And so this might be some good news as far as where rates are headed in the future. And if we want to look at inflation numbers, consumer price index, that came out, and we're starting to see year over year core inflation down to 4.1%. And then the headline year over year is also down. So these are numbers that are showing that, hey, inflation is starting to come down. It's not under control. There's no doubt about it. It's still high. We need it to get lower. But we're starting to see some signs, some data that's showing that what the Fed's been doing is actually working. So what I suggest is you get out and talk to your clients about this. There's so much information out there. Share this data, talk to them, get them connected with what you know about the market. You can't control what's going to happen in the market, but what you can do is impact how your buyers and sellers are taking that information by being the expert and the resource for the information that's out there. So we're starting the week floating. If we see any change in the market, we'll definitely move to a locking position. If you know somebody could benefit this video, please forward it to them. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to give me a call. Have a great week, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.